Today we are covering the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voter Rights Act of 1965. The Civil Rights Act was heavily influenced during the spring of 1963 when Bull Connor unleashed police dogs and water hoses on protesters, when many of them were women and children. The public opinion has changed from 4% to 52% of Americans viewing civil rights the most urgent issue in the United States. After that, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill into a law on July 2nd of 1964. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibited unequal application of voter registration rules, racial discrimination in hotels, motels, restaurants, and theaters, and denying access to public facilities such as libraries and parks on the basis of race. The Civil Rights Act also empowered attorney generals to enforce school desegregation. After the passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, there's two main court cases that attested this new law. One was the Heart of Atlanta Motel versus United States, which this motel prohibited blacks to stay there, and Katzenberg, which would only allow blacks to take out food. And in both these cases, Congress ruled in their favor. Another person who tested this new law was Silas McGee. Silas McGee went into a movie theater after the Civil Rights Act happened, and in response, people drove him out by heckling him, brawling with him, etc., etc. The Freedom Summer of 1964 and Freedom Schools. The summer of 1964 was aimed to increase voter registration in Mississippi. There was 3 civil rights leaders who were killed. There's plenty of bombings, shootings, and beatings, all in the summer. The Freedom Schools tried to teach African Americans so that they could register to vote. Silas McGee was attacked by the KKK when he was spectating Freedom Day, which caused an enforcement of civil rights bill. In Selma, there were 4 literacy volunteers that went to desegregate the Thirsty Boys drive-in restaurants. After that failed, they were hauled away to jail, and a sympathetic crowd sought to desegregate movie theaters in Selma and were also driven out. After these failed attempts, there was a church meeting in which Clark, the sheriff, viewed as a riot and had tear gas and billy clubs to disperse them. This sparked the voter rights movement. On July 6th, Lewis led aspiring voters to the courthouse for registration, and they were arrested by Clark. Judge Hare banned any public assembly of 3 or more members of SNCC and SCLC and 40 other organizations in Selma. On March 7th, 1965 in Selma, it was Bloody Sunday. Under Clark, there was 2 white Northerners killed and several others injured by stampeded horses, tear gas, and flailing clubs. People were assaulted as they crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge on their way to Montgomery to demonstrate black enfranchisement. After this, Americans were outraged. Johnson signed the Voter Rights Act in response. This act said that there was no more literacy tests. 60% of African Americans now registered to vote. This helped with integration, and more movements came out of this.